Today I'm driving not one, but two Mk3 Cavaliers. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that button right now and hit the like button as well if you like the film as it goes along. And if you really like it, then please share it on Facebook or Twitter or something like that. Tell your friends, if you like. It's 1990. You've just got a new job, you've got a shiny new Burton suit, and you're walking into the office for the first time to collect the keys to your new company car. The choice was a Sierra or a new Cavalier. What else are you going to choose? The new boy on the block, the Cavalier. It looks so modern and exciting. But you're only a lowly starter, so you get the 1.8 LS, but you're still as proud as punch because you've got a brand new Cavalier. 3 years later though, your boss has been caught doing something very naughty, so he's lost his job and you've just got his SRI and a promotion. I'm going to take both these cars out and find out whether it was worth putting in the hours to get the better car. The Mk3 Cavalier was launched in 1988, and at the time, the Sierra, which had looked so exciting, bold and cutting edge, suddenly looked a bit yesterday's news, and the battle between the Blue Oval and the Griffin was taken to new ground. Of course, Ford raised the stakes again in 1992 when the Mondeo came out, and suddenly the Cavalier didn't look so modern anymore, but for the time being, we'll concentrate on these. The Mk2 Cavalier ran from 1981 to 1988. It was GM's global J body. America, Australia, Europe, everywhere, under different names and under different manufacturers. In Britain, it was the Vauxhall Cavalier. The Mk2 had been the first front-wheel drive, and that carried on into the Mk3. And in Britain, it carried on being the Cavalier as a Mk3. In Europe, under Opel, it became the first iteration of the Vectra. It was a nice bit of styling. It's inoffensive and attractive at the same time. It doesn't really offend anyone, but it's pretty enough to draw people to it as well. Everything is very, very sleek and aerodynamic. The Calibra, the sports car spawned by the Cavalier, had the lowest drag coefficient of anything in production ever at the time. And this isn't far off, with these neatly fared in wing mirrors, flush fitting door handles, and everything just being perfectly wind tunnel tuned. And of course, don't forget, alloy wheels were the preserve of the absolute highest echelons of these models. Most of them came with hubcaps, even the SRI, although this one has been played with. So when you got the keys to your new company car 1.8 LS, what did that bring you? Well, quite a lot actually. So as you grab the large, quite comfortable to hold, but surprisingly not adjustable steering wheel, you'll notice there's an airbag in it because this is a 1993 car. And everything about the car is really well thought out, really well laid out. You can tell as cars moved from the 70s to the 80s and into the 90s, a lot more logic and thought was going into how everything was laid out and how it's going to be used. So let's go our usual right to left. Starting with the doors, it's hard plastic door capping, but it's a fleet car, it has to be hard wearing. But the door handles themselves are nice and positive, and you've got a good solid grip on the handle. And you have a fabric lined door insert, which helps get the noise of the drumming doors down and makes it feel a bit more premium. And we've got massive door pockets as well, so plenty of room for all your stuff down there. So we've got our usual Vauxhall rotating headlight switch, off, side, dip, and then pull for interior, which is on anyway because the door's open. And below that we've got an unmarked knurled knob, which is to change the dashboard brightness. And to the left of that we've got our rear fog light switch, because that's the law, you have to have one of them, and a blanked off switch because being only a lowly LS, we didn't get front fogs. And underneath that we do have headlamp aim adjustment. I mentioned the steering wheel, it's got a kind of nice rubbery tactile feel. Not quite sure about the horn tone though. Doesn't feel dignified enough to me. The stalks are very standard, very easy. Indicators and lights on the left, wipers and rear wash on the right. Can't go wrong with that. And your dials are very nice and clearly laid out. It's a big semicircle in the middle and kind of interlocking semicircles on either side. And a big bank of warning lights for you to play with at your leisure. No, obviously not play with, because something will have gone wrong if you are playing with them. The centre console is really nicely laid out. Got big face side vents which are fully adjustable in every direction and turn off and onable for flow. Hazard lights, nice and easy to find. And below that we've got our heating and ventilation, rear screen heater, those kind of things. And of course 2 blank buttons, again because it's only an LS. Maybe when we look in the SRI we'll see what they do. And this is a new novelty, apart from the digital clock, which is new and exciting. We've got a temperature gauge, which is, you can't buy a car without a temperature gauge these days, I don't think. But in this is quite an exciting development. Now this has had its standard Vauxhall radio cassette replaced with a modern CD changer with Bluetooth and stuff, so I won't say much more about that. But you do have a nice big cubby hole below that, rubber lined from the factory, so you could have probably had a CD player or a graphic equalizer installed if you so desired. And below that we've got even more storage. At the very bottom we've got another rubber lined cubby hole, and I do like our retractable hidden cover area. This is your big ashtray, and it was a cigarette lighter socket, but now it's twin USBs because that's way more useful these days. You'll notice it's only a 5-speed gearbox with a lift ring to get into reverse, but it's a firm shift, and we'll talk more about this when we're on the road. Everything else continues to be well laid out and quite well thought out. You've got a easy to reach handbrake with a nice cutout beneath it, coin holders for your parking, electric windows in the centre, and yet another big rubber lined cubby hole. This is a car designed for people who are going to be on the road all day, every day. So there's places for everything in your car. You've got pens, paper, sweets, drinks, you name it, it's here. This is before the days of cup holders, of course, but I'm sure you could have stashed a can of Coke or something somewhere in here. And finally, over on the passenger side, we have a vast opening here. Later on, this would be ideal for a passenger side airbag, but here it's just a big again, rubber lined. They do like their dimpled rubber linings. Stuff holder, a huge glove box. I mean, this is absolutely massive. This is bigger than some cars' boots. And also you do have T-shelf built into the lid, although it's because it's below the opening, I'm not quite sure how you get a mug in there. I'll leave that to you to figure out. I don't know if this is because Vauxhall and Saab were tied together at the time, but you do have the safety see-through headrest, so you can look behind you and not have your view blocked. But the seat is nicely adjustable and very comfortable and very supportive as well. Vauxhalls have always said, I've got seats that are far too hard, but this is the last Vauxhall I really feel that has really nice, comfortable, well-sprung seats, pretty much ever, really. Come on, Vauxhall, give us some softer seats again. Let's look in the back. Now, were you heading off to a sales meeting with 3 of your colleagues, the 2 guys in the back were not going to be shortchanged in either head or legroom, because there's masses of both. This is not only a great company car, this is a really good family car as well. Many of the people issued with these cars would have been family men as well, and so this would have been the family workhorse, going off on camping and caravanning and long distant holidays. Don't forget, in the 90s, taking the ferry to France was a very popular thing to do, as it is today, but even more popular then. In fact, I seem to remember many family holidays in the back of a company car going to France with my 2 brothers. We have the same fabric lined doors, no door pockets in the back though, wind up windows, but there is, although not activated from here, central locking. As well as 2 3-point seat belts and a lap belt, you've got an armrest in the middle, which is nice and foamy, and I believe it's called a ski hole or ski hatch, so you can get long stuff through there if you're shifting long stuff. Now, I've been warned this is not an empty boot, but it does give you a good idea of how much space there is in here. This boot goes back all the way. If you were disposing of a number of corpses, you could probably get about 3 bodies in here. Or you could get several curver boxes full of maps and directions. If you're going down the garden centre, you could fill it with all manner of plants. If you're, I don't know, just buying big stuff, it'll go in here. Don't question me. Now, you do have a courtesy light on the left-hand side, and you have an emergency triangle and first aid kit on the right. Well, it was there when the car was new anyway. And we do have a handle to shut the boot. This is entering the modern age. So this is Vauxhall's 1.8 litre single cam, single point fuel injection, 95 horsepower, C18 NZ 4-cylinder petrol engine. Hope you're taking notes. Early iterations of the car actually only came with a carburettor, but later on injection became more and more advanced, and we'll look at something even more advanced in a moment. It was only 95 horsepower, but it was quite a smooth engine and gave respectable performance and decent economy, which is what really matters when you're filling in those fuel claim forms. As you moved up the pecking order of Cavaliers, there are a number of other engines, but at the top of the range was a C20NE, well, in 1990 anyway. This is 115 horsepower, 8-valve, 2-litre. Later on, of course, there was 130 horsepower, 16-valve, then the red top and the Ecotec, and the power kept going up and up, and the miles per gallon kept going up as well, actually, so better all round. This is regarded as one of Vauxhall's greatest ever achievements, this engine. Reliable, economical, long-lived, what's not to love? Now, to counteract the attack of the new Mondeo, Vauxhall retaliated with this new grille. You can see how much more exciting it is than the previous generation on the red car. Believe it or not, the bumpers and the lights are different as well. But you have to spend a long time looking for those differences. There's a black bit on the facelift just here. Makes all the difference. Now, when you got your promotion, you got actually not that much more, to be perfectly honest. You had the option of leather seats, and they could be heated, as they were here, and you got electric door mirrors. That's kind of it, really. Wooden door cappings. I have to be honest, this car is actually a slight mongrel, as these are Calibra front seats, and it's got door cards from another model as well. So, although it is largely original, it's not completely there. But everything else will be totally familiar to our LS driver as he steps up the corporate rankings. The light switches are the same, still got a blanked off front fog light. I'm surprised at that. We have our heated rear window in the same place. All of our switches and dials are identical, even our pop-out ashtray. And this one has, I love this option, cassette holders. Whee! I would get no work done. Oh, what's it? Bonnie Tyler, Total Eclipse of the Heart. Kylie. Yeah, some good listening here. Being a sporty version, we've got darker, blacker tones, so it's more sinister, more serious. It's your serious wheelman's car. We'll find out how serious it is in a minute. Now, both cars come with a manual sunroof. Pop up and retractable, which is nice. Now, to counteract the attack of the new Mondeo, Vauxhall retaliated with this new grille. You can see how much more exciting it is than the previous generation on the red car. Now, before we take the Cavalier for a drive, I just quickly want to show you this wallet that Exeter have sent me to try. The main body holds up to 5 cards, and the push button launches them out for easy access. And in the back, there's another slot which you can use either for more cards or for the tracker. This will track your wallet globally, so if it gets lost or stolen, you can find it anywhere on the planet. And if you know it's nearby, you can use your phone to ring it. And not only that, to protect you from card cloning and identity theft, it's RFID shielded. You can get yours with the link down below. Click on it, have a look. The Parliament, it's quite nice. Now, compared to cars from previous decades, it's amazing how smooth and easily this car just fires up. With only 95 or so horsepower, it's not the most rapid ball of fire car you're ever going to drive, but it delivers it really smoothly and quite pleasantly, really. Now, the gear change isn't exactly notchy, but it does have a certain kind of rubbery weight to it. A little bit of resistance, more than I was expecting, to be honest. And the steering is extremely light, really, really light. Now, as I said earlier, this is the last Vauxhall I think I've ever driven with really comfortable seats, and even the Omega has slightly too firm a seat, in my opinion. And this is a real high point in Vauxhall's design, if I'm going to be honest. Well, at least the seating was. In fact, I would go as far as to say this was the last great Vauxhall. Is that contentious? Are people going to get angry about that? That's just my opinion. Now, cars like this exist in Britain thanks to a quirk of the tax system, which means companies can offer their employees a perk in the form of a car which they're taxed more lightly on than they would be if they took the cash instead. Lots of jobs, like travelling salespeople, for example, where driving was essential, it became a huge perk and a real status thing of who got the best company car. Badges mattered back then, to the point even that if you were driving an LS like this and you came up behind a GL, the GL might not let you overtake on the motorway because you weren't driving as good a car, so therefore you weren't as important as they were. The suspension is really lovely and soft. In fact, the whole car is lovely and soft. This has got all new shocks around, so it's performing as it should do. I think it's got new bushes as well, so it all feels correct, and it just feels so soft. Not roly-poly, not like it's not under control, but just comfortable. Like if you're going to spend the next 8 hours driving this car from appointment to appointment, that would be no hardship. That would be very nicer than being in the office. I expect your office chair isn't as comfortable as this car is. Now the clutch is also a little heavier than I was expecting. If you drive an equivalent modern car, there'd be a bit more assistance with it and it wouldn't take quite as much force. And the brakes, they're good too. Which brings us back to the one thing left on the table, acceleration. I can't really do any 0 to 60 as I'm in a 30 zone right now. When we get to a faster road, I'll bring the car to a halt and show you. Now you may remember this car from a few months ago when it turned up at my friend's yard and he was thinking of selling it and I was thinking of trading him for the Tomcat. Well, he's still got it, but he's also got the SRI as well. In a way, I'm kind of glad I kept the Tomcat because this is a really nice car. But the Tomcat feels more like a classic than this does. This is more like a retro daily, and the Tomcat feels more like a special occasion. Weirdly, I've just noticed there's a coat hook above the front grub handle on the passenger side. Obviously they're in the back seat as well, because you know it's the kind of car where the suit jacket hanging in the back window may as well have come from the factory that way. But when front, that's just going to block your vision at roundabouts and turnings. That's mad. Right, we appear to be in a de-restricted zone at last. Let's bring the car to a halt and then go. There's a bit of tyre squeal there, that's 40 miles an hour. Quite hard pushing through the gearbox, it's a little bit notchy and rubbery for that. 60. I'll have to count that on the video afterwards, so I'm not timing it. And up into 5th. And suddenly we've got ourselves a motorway cruiser, although we're on a back road at the moment. As it was intended, this is a ridiculously easy car to drive. It's really easy to find a nice comfortable sitting position. In fact, I've barely moved the seat since I've climbed into it. And it's got great visibility all round. It feels light and it feels airy. With the sunroof open just a crack, got a nice bit of air venting in. No air conditioning on this model. I don't think the SRI had aircon either, at least not the one we're looking at. But generally, it's a very, very pleasant place to be. And here we are in its natural habitat, a dual carriageway heading towards a motorway. Because this is what this car does, it's a big platform. Well, for the day it was a big platform, whereas a modern equivalent, Mondeo or Insignia, feels like quite a big thing. This feels quite little, really. Grips quite well. More than 1.8 million Cavaliers were built, and around 800,000 of these were Mark IIIs. Now, although I am absolutely itching to get hold of the SRI and try that 2 litre, this is the car that's probably more representative of the model because it's the kind of thing that most families would have had. It's kind of the mid-range. It's not quite the bottom of the pack like an L or whatever they were calling it that particular week, because there were a lot of variations on these cars. But most people wouldn't have had the SRI or the CD or the Diplomat either. The majority of buyers would have wound up with something like an LS. A lucky few would have got an SRI or a GSI, again depending on the year, because they changed the names so many times. Vauxhall's naming convention was a random mix of letters, American places and just random words really. Between 1988 and 1992, the range went Base, L, GL, CD, Diplomat, 4x4, SRI, GSI, Concept and Expression, and then 92 to 95 it became the Envoy, then the LS, Colorado, GLS, V6, CD, CDX, Diplomat, Cesaro, Turbo, Ethos, Expression and Concept. I remember my dad had a Mark II Cavalier CD as a company car, and that felt so special. But on this mid-range LS, you do still get like a height adjustable seat. You get adjustable height safety belts. You've got a 5-speed gearbox, which was still fairly exciting back then. Automatics were often still only 3-speed back in the late 80s. It's amazingly steady, doing 70 miles an hour down a dual carriageway. It's just astonishing how smooth this thing is and how comfortable. It's just really refined. There's a little bit of a growl from the engine. It feels like 70 is about as fast as it's going to be happy going to. Beyond that, it's going to be a bit unhappy. But it'll do it. It'll just let you know. It's like that janitor who doesn't like having to sweep the floor even though it's his job. It's funny, although I thought the steering was really light at first, as I've driven more and more with it, it actually feels a bit more heavy than I'd first given it credit for? I don't think credit's the right word here, because there is a slight weariness in my shoulders even just after a few minutes of manoeuvring. So what do I think of the 1.8 LS? Well, with under 100 horsepower, it needs a little bit more. It's a really nice car. If I was looking for a retro daily to just use, throw my stuff in and go to work, go to the shops, that kind of stuff, I really couldn't fault it. It's one of those cars that's going to be endlessly reliable. It's really comfortable. The boot is enormous and the back seat is huge. So, got the kids' seats in there, stuff. If you're going camping for the weekend, you could fit a massive amount of stuff: tent, barbecue, everything, kayak, you name it. And it's comfortable. It's got a sunroof and electric windows. What more do you want? It's only got manual windows on this particular model because of what it is. But does it feel special enough to make going for a drive an occasion? I don't know. It's interesting, but it's not an occasion. Let's go and try the SRI and see what that's like. Right, so now I have the keys to the exciting one. It's got a 1990s immobiliser. Don't turn it on quickly enough, it locks itself again. I think it's a Clifford, which is real period stuff. Let's go. Now, I hope you all appreciate the fact that I'm shooting this on a trading estate on the weekend, because it's, topical and the right kind of thing. Oops, okay, that mirror doesn't stay shut. Let's leave that closed. Because it's a topical location for this car. So what do I think? Holy moly, there's more power. A little bit of clutch slippage going on, but wow. Your promotion was worth it. If you've climbed the slippery ladder, the greasy pole, or whatever you want to call it, and you've got yourself an SRI, or the I is for important, you've worked hard and it was worth the effort, because this is so much more rapid. I'll have to do a 0 to 60 again in a moment. This is brilliant. Also, the things you notice straight away, the suspension feels firmer, and this shouldn't be the case, but the gear shift does feel a lot lighter and less rubbery. I don't know why that would be, whether the other one needs bits rebushes or this one's worn out, I don't know. I'm not sure which one's correct, but this is a lot lighter. Oh wow, Mark 1 Polo pulling out the garage, a little bread van. Power steering as before, still feels really tight. Now, although it's not really short turns lock to lock like on an Alfa 156 or something from a couple of years later, you do feel nicely connected. It has a solid place in popular culture. Not only was it successful in British touring car racing with John Cleland constantly on the podium, it was always on TV in everything from Keeping Up Appearances and One Foot in the Grave to Inspector Morse. Alan, who owns both of these cars, is currently thinking he's going to sell one because, 2 Mark 3 Cavaliers is probably one too many. Now, I think he's now decided that he's going to keep this one and sell the LS, because he was at one point going to do it the other way around. And I think that is the right decision. If I was looking for a Cavalier, this would definitely be the one I would be going for. And we can go for our 0 to 60. 3, 2, 1, go! 30, 40, 50. Running out puff a bit as we were meant to, fifth too early perhaps there. 60, oh, only third, sorry. 60 miles an hour. Now, this car is firmer sprung. It feels like you're going to cling on in the corners a bit more and have a bit more of a play with it. It's less of the luxury, more of the sporty. It's interesting because the car, to all intents and purposes, is identical. It's the same 5-door body shell as before, with all virtually the same controls as well, same heating controls and everything else, apart from someone's put some Calibra dials in there. But it feels like a completely different vehicle. Okay, I know that it's got the sportier steering wheel and the Calibra front seats, but the Cavalier had sports seats as well, so it's not a world apart in terms of difference. Now, one oversight that was notable at the time from the Mark III Cavalier over the Mark II was there's no estate version. Because it was a world car, GM, Opel, Holden, Vauxhall, and they're all their global subsidiaries, they were able to pick and choose. So whereas there was I think it was a Holden Mark II, whatever they want to call it, the J-body variant going on in Australia with a wagon, Vauxhall could then import that pressing and build an estate Mark II. Because the Mark III was unique to Europe at first, there was no pressing they could borrow from, so they were stuck with only this body style for a time. And that's when they started losing out to the Sierra in the end, because people wanted a wagon and there wasn't one. So whereas the LS was a great car for being comfortable in, like a living room on wheels almost, and great for a long journey, although this would also be a comfortable car for a long drive, wouldn't be quite as comfortable. But when you reach the other end and you found some nice twisty roads, say you'd driven from the east coast to the Evo Triangle in Wales, before that was a thing, you could then have a proper old dice and really enjoy the car, because this is a car that you can enjoy a lot. Now, I mentioned earlier this is a bit of a mongrel of bits and pieces. Now, the previous owner took what I believe to be a GSI and put a lot of SRI stuff in it. For example, that rear spoiler is worth a lot of money, even though you could barely notice it. So we're not quite sure on the provenance, whether it is the 115 or 130 horsepower engine in this. Without taking the exhaust manifold off, you can't actually see the number and double check because they look the same from the outside. But it certainly feels like it's got a lot of poke to it. It's not going to run out of puff at 70 miles an hour like the 1.8. And the great thing is they both get great economy. The 1.8 apparently was getting 40 miles to the gallon at the weekend on a run up to Hull. I'm not quite sure what this one does. I don't think he's done enough miles in it to really get a good feel for it, but it's still going to be 30 mpg plus. It's amazing how a car, which is now, 1990 this car was built, which is going to be 30 years old next year, and yet it still feels really tight, really composed, great fun thing to drive. My initial instinct when I drove the blue one just around the car park a few months ago was, I really like this car. I was right. It is a really nice car. After I drove the 1.8, I'd kind of got the Cavalier out of my system. It was a nice bit of reminiscence, but it didn't make me think I would like to trade in my everyday W204 C-Class and roll in one of them just for the hell of it. This though, SRI, now I'm thinking, this is a really good car. I might have to go and look for a 4x4 or a V6 now. Bother. Another car for the shopping list. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed not one but two Cavaliers, double Vauxhall goodness in your inbox, or whatever it is you call it on YouTube, on your homepage? I don't know. Hey, thanks for watching though. Hope you've enjoyed. It's a little slice of 90s nostalgia. 90s, the greatest generation of everything, really. Great music, great cars, great outlook on life. There's something I really like about 90s cars. Maybe it's just because that entire decade just felt really positive and hopeful. It's a bit like the 60s in that respect. Maybe it's like a 30-year cycle of some kind. But unlike today, where everyone's a bit jaded and a bit too cynical, in the 90s, there was a lot more positivity going around. People felt good about stuff way more than they do now. The music was good. Whether you like happy house hardcore or metal or rock or indie, there was great stuff everywhere. And the cars like this, I mean, maybe some people think they're too modern, but I really like where the styling went back then. And they were making such really big leaps in terms of reliability and crash safety. So you could drive this car every day, you'd turn the key every morning, and it would go. If you were unfortunate enough to get into a wallop with it, you would probably be all right. Okay, this one doesn't have an airbag. Being the 1990 one, it was pre the airbag facelift. But generally, you would probably walk away from most big shunts in a 90s car. But it wasn't so new that it was stuffed with more electronics than you could fix at home, and it wasn't so crude that you still had carburetors on things. It was a really nice middle point. We should bring back the 90s, that's basically what I'm saying. I'm not sure it's really practical.